Warning: viewer discretion is advised. Hi friends, welcome to Meals Done Alive For, where we talk about a true crime case and make a death row meal from scratch. I'm your host Jody Breton, and if you enjoy this episode, please like and subscribe. Today we're going to be talking about Danny Rolling, known as the Gainesville Ripper, and he was the inspiration for the horror movie Scream. Danny was born May 26, 1954 in Shreveport, Louisiana. His parents were James Rolling and Claudia Beatrice, and he had one younger brother named Kevin. Danny's father, James, was a Korean War veteran in the U.S. Navy and a Shreveport police officer. He was definitely not a good person. He was extremely abusive to his wife and children, and he made it very clear to his sons that they were not wanted. At a year old, Danny's father beat him for not crawling properly, whatever that means. At one point, a neighbor had said that James told him that love does not exist, that love is just a means for someone to manipulate you. So clearly he was not a very nice person. Claudia would leave James many times, but unfortunately she always ended up coming back. And because of this, Danny developed a misplaced rage at his mother. Another instance of abuse was James brought home a dog for the boys, but beat the dog so frequently that the dog ended up passing away in Danny's arms. And I know that I talk a lot about death and tragic ends, but I really hate the instances of animal abuse. I love animals and I love dogs. I have 3 of them. So I don't know why, but kids and animals always get to me so hard. In 1963, Danny didn't pass the 3rd grade because he had taken so many sick days, and Claudia was so terrified to tell her husband that she checked herself into a mental hospital. Sometime in 1965, when Danny was 11, his mother locked herself in the bathroom during a fight with James, and she tried to unalive herself with a razor that Danny all witnessed. And unfortunately, James did not care about Claudia. All he did was berate her and further egg her on. As a result, Danny tried to cope by using drugs and alcohol. At 12, Danny said that this was when he started fantasizing about unaliving people, and he would wander the woods for hours just fantasizing about this. At 14, Danny was caught peeping on a teenage girl in his neighborhood, and as a result, James beat Danny. In 1971, Danny was 17. He dropped out of high school and got his GED and enlisted in the U.S. Air Force. Originally, he had enlisted in the U.S. Navy, but unfortunately didn't pass the required tests, so he went for the Air Force as a second choice. While enlisted, his drug problems really ramped up, and as a result, he was charged with possession. A psychiatrist was brought in to speak to 18-year-old Danny and diagnosed him with an undetermined personality disorder, and he was honorably discharged. After he was discharged, he moved back to Shreveport in with his grandfather. Soon after, Danny was hitchhiking one day and was picked up by a man named Estes from the United Pentecostal Church. Estes asked Danny if he wanted to go to church and pray with him, and this was Danny's spiritual awakening. Danny would become very dedicated to the church and said in his biography that it brought him a lot of peace. He also started volunteering a lot, and he seemed to really enjoy this part of his life. While at the church, Danny would meet his first wife, Omatha Halko, and they would get married 4 months after they met. 1 year after, they would have a daughter together. This caused a lot of stress on Danny, and at 21, he started drinking and left the church. Danny's behavior continued to escalate, and one night he was brought home by 2 police officers who caught him peeping in a woman's window. It was said that they didn't charge him with anything because they knew that his father was a police officer himself, but they did bring him home to his wife and they made sure that she knew what he did. Danny said that it was about this time when he started seeing things like evil and demons who were trying to possess him, like apparitions and things on the wall and just really crazy hallucinations. Danny stopped showing up for work altogether, and Omatha wanted to leave Danny, but she ended up staying because Danny would threaten her or threaten himself. He eventually caught his wife having an affair, and he beat both Omatha and her affair partner. Soon after, Omatha filed for divorce and Danny moved back in with his parents. Right after his divorce, Danny got into a car accident. He turned a corner in his semi-truck and smashed into a van, which threw a woman from the van that killed her. Danny had taken his first human life, but was never charged for anything regarding the accident. Danny had been peeping on a few college girls who lived blocks away from his parents' home. He decided to go to one of the aforementioned girls' homes. He took his shoes off, put his socks on his hands, and a cloth over his face as a mask. The brunette woman that he had been watching for a while was the only one in the home. He burst through the living room, dragged her to the bedroom, essayed her, and then left. He was never caught for the crime and only admitted to it years later. After Danny would start many petty crimes, especially robbing Winn-Dixie's, in May 1979, he was arrested after robbing one of these grocery stores and was sentenced to 6 years in prison. For the next 5 years, Danny was shuffled around prisons in Georgia and Alabama. He made many escape attempts but were unsuccessful in all of them. And this part I didn't understand because he was only sentenced to petty crimes. So, I can understand if you're serving a life sentence, but it's just finish out your time. You're going to get more time every time you try to escape. It didn't make sense to me. In 1984, at age 30, Danny was released. 1 year after being released, he robbed another supermarket and was sentenced to 4 years in Jackson County Jail. He was paroled 2 years later on the condition that he leave Mississippi and go back to Shreveport, Louisiana. After being released, he moved back into his parents' home and worked at a restaurant, but was fired on November 4th, 1984. The same night Danny was fired, he would unalive his very first victim. 24-year-old Julie Grissom had been receiving a series of strange phone calls leading up to November 4th. That day, Julie's father Tom was grilling when Danny snuck up on him and stabbed him 8 times. Next, he snuck up on 8-year-old Sean watching TV and also stabbed him. Just as a side note, Sean was not Julie's younger brother. Sean was another family member. It said that Tom was his grandfather, so I don't know if that made Sean Julie's nephew or how that relation was in connection to Julie, but I just know that he was a distant family member. When Sean didn't go to school, his mother was called and she called the police officer for a welfare check. Police would find Tom and Sean's bodies downstairs. And I can't imagine how devastated Sean's mother must have been, thinking that your son is just with a distant family member, like a lot of us are sent to our grandparents or distant family to hang out and just have fun, and then to have something happen that was even out of her family member's control is just awful. In the bedroom, they found Julie's naked body posed hanging off the bed, and she had been stabbed at least 3 times. She also had bite marks on her, and the killer had tried to wipe her down with vinegar to get rid of the DNA. In December of 1989, Danny got into an argument with his father, so he left the house and started peeping. He went to a house he'd been to before and broke in to wait for her, but she hadn't come home, so he left. And I thought this part was so crazy because whoever this woman is doesn't even know how lucky she was that she didn't come home that night. Meanwhile, there were no leads in the Grissom murders, so it had gone cold, and so far Danny had gotten away with murder. In May 1990, Danny and his father James got into another argument, only this time they got into a gunfight, shooting at each other. Danny shot James in the stomach and the forehead, then kicked him a couple times before fleeing the scene. James didn't pass away though he did have a lengthy hospital stay and recovery. Danny continued to move around, moving from place to place to avoid capture. While he was on the run, he was on a mountain hike in Boulder, Colorado. He came across a young woman, and the voices in his head said to assault her. When she resisted, he beat her. She begged him to let her go, and he did let her escape. Again, she ended up getting super lucky. I feel so sorry for her that she was assaulted, but I'm so glad that she made it out alive. After this incident, Danny hitchhiked to South Florida, and on July 22nd, he reached Sarasota. He immediately started looking for his next victims, staking out houses the next several weeks. On August 5th, he settled on the house of 30-year-old Jeanette Frake. He watched her leaving, then broke into her home to wait for her. When she came home, he was wearing a black ski mask and he tied her up. Now, Jeanette was a true crime girly like a lot of us are, so she tried to recall everything that she had learned. After Danny had sexually assaulted her, she asked him if he wanted to take a break and have a cold beer. She was hoping that he'd leave fingerprints on the glass and that by her humanizing herself, she'd be less likely to be killed. Danny ended up letting her shower alone, and she wiped herself down with a towel and hid it in hopes that there would be some DNA on it. Jeanette said, and I quote, "He thought he was in control, but I was the one who really took control." Later that night, he asked her permission to take his mask off, and she told him no because she felt it would be more likely he'd unalive her. By 1:30 a.m., Jeanette was exhausted and she told Danny it was time he left, and he did just that. And I just want to say what a strong woman Jeanette is. I'd probably end up being unalive because I'd be talking some major smack till the end. Instead, she was extremely smart, manipulated him into doing what she wanted, and planned accordingly. Before leaving, he told Jeanette that if circumstances were different, he would have tried to date her. Then he asked her to wait 10 minutes before calling the police. After this assault, he made his way to Gainesville, Florida, home to the University of Florida. On August 24th, 1990, Danny ended up at the Williamsburg Village apartment. He broke into apartment 113. 17-year-old Christina Powell was asleep on the couch. He left her there and went upstairs to the bedroom where 18-year-old Sonia Larson was asleep in bed. He gagged Sonia, then stabbed her to death, then crept back downstairs. Danny woke Christina and told her that if she cooperated, he wouldn't hurt her. He then essayed her on the living room floor and stabbed her to death. After he carefully got rid of any evidence, taking the tape with him, wiping down surfaces, and cleaning up the bodies. 2 days later, the girls' parents went for a wellness check since they couldn't get a hold of them, and on August 26, police found their bodies. The girls had been suggestively posed, and Christina's nipples had been torn off. 9 hours after police found the girls, they were called to the home of 18-year-old Krista Hoyt, who only lived 2 miles away from the other 2 girls. When Krista hadn't shown up for work, her coworkers called for a wellness check, and police found her body. She had also been posed, but this time was much more gruesome. After sexually assaulting Krista, he stabbed her to death. Danny then sliced her open from her breastbone to her pubic bone. Danny said that he had actually left at this point, but realized that he was missing his wallet, so he goes back to the crime scene of Krista's apartment to check to see if he had left it there, and that's when he continues to mutilate her body. He ends up decapitating her and then put her head on a bookshelf, facing her body so it looks like she's looking at herself. On August 27, 1990, Danny broke into the home of 23-year-old Tracy Paulez and Manny Taboda, also 23. Danny ambushed Manny while he was sleeping, and after a struggle, he kills him. Tracy, hearing the commotion, came to see what was going on. She then saw Danny, and she runs back to her room and tries to barricade the door, but Danny gets through. He once again sexually assaults Tracy, then stabs her to death. He did end up posing Tracy like he did with the other women, but he leaves Manny's body alone. And I just want to mention here that Danny Rolling definitely had a type. He preferred petite, white, brunette women, so that was very much a common theme between all of his victims. So investigators think that the only reason why he killed the men in 2 different households is because they were in the way of getting to the real victims, which were Julie and Tracy in these 2 cases. I also noticed that all of his victims looked very much like his wife and his mother specifically. So he definitely, I think, modeled his victims after what his mother looked like, which, ew. Police did find semen samples from all of the murders, so now they had the killer's DNA if he ever committed another crime. In between these murders, Danny had robbed a credit union, and one day police tried to stop Danny, but he ran and led police right to his campsite, where they found money covered in pink dye. Police then realized that they found the culprit from the recent bank robbery. Danny did get away during that chase, so he stole a car and drove to Tampa. On the way there, he burglarized other homes, leaving a trail for police to follow. In September 1990, he tried to rob another Winn-Dixie in Ocala. An employee sounded the alarm. Danny attempted to flee, resulting in a high-speed chase. Then he tried to run on foot. Police caught up and arrested him. He was sentenced to multiple life terms for his long string of robberies. While a detective cross-examined the murders, they had a hunch about Danny. They found Manny's blood on a pair of pants, Krista's DNA evidence on a sleeping bag, and a screwdriver match. From this, Danny was ordered to give a DNA sample, and he was a match to the crime scenes. He then confessed to the 5 Gainesville murders and the 3 Shreveport murders. Danny repeatedly blamed the voices inside his head that he called Gemini, but also said that he wanted to be a killer like Ted Bundy, who had just been executed in 1989. While incarcerated, Danny meets a true crime author named Sandra London. They start working on a book together, mainly his biography. They become involved and get engaged in 1992, and Sandra makes a media circus out of it. You can tell that she's just searching for her 5 minutes of fame, making everyone talk to her in regards to Danny while claiming that they had true love. While I was internet sleuthing, I came across a video of one of the trials, and Danny starts singing a love song to Sandra right in the middle of court. And when I tell you it's the cringiest thing I've ever seen, there's a lot of secondhand embarrassment, and what's even worse is the judge allowed him to finish the song. Shortly after the book was published in 1996, they separate, which no surprise there. I looked up Sandra, and she has a video on her website, and let me just describe this video to you. And I wish I could say that this is an exaggeration, but it's not. At the beginning of the video, she says, "Remember when you were a child and you were afraid of the boogeyman? Well, for me, I'm in my room and the boogeyman is on this dark horse who comes riding up and opens my window, and I get pulled onto this big stallion, and then I wrap my arms around the boogeyman and we ride off." That's what she says in the beginning of this video. It's extremely cringe. She is honestly just cringe as a dumpster fire human. And then she goes on to talk about how she's been involved with another serial killer. So I think that she just was reaching for her 5 minutes of fame. The US Sun did an interview with Sandra in January 2022, and she said that she didn't shed a tear for Danny, saying that she didn't miss him, following with, "What's there to miss? He was a book and I finished the book." So if that's any indication of how she really felt about Danny, I don't know what else is. Danny pled guilty to the murders, and on April 20th, 1994, he was sentenced to death. He had no last statements, but did sing some gospel hymns. On October 25th, 2006, Danny Rolling was executed by lethal injection and was pronounced dead at 6:13 p.m. Danny's last meal was a lobster tail, butterfly shrimp, baked potato, cheesecake, and a sweet tea. I really, really enjoyed this one. I think that this is going to be probably the best one I've done yet, and I'm going to rank it at 9 out of 10. It just had everything. I think personally, for my last meal, cheesecake would be involved, so I was pretty happy with this one. So that was the story of the Gainesville Ripper. What did you guys think about this one? I think it was a pretty wild ride. I don't understand why it's so popular for, I don't want to say just women, but people in general reaching out to serial killers and trying to form a relationship with them. I will never understand it. But anyway, if you guys enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe. Hopefully, I'll see you on the dissection. If not, I will see you next week. Thanks, guys. Bye.